Valentine's Day is supposed to be simple. A reservation, a gift, a message that arrives on time. A night built around the idea that love is something you can plan, something you can arrange carefully enough that nothing unexpected can reach you. Most people trust the ritual, because it's familiar, because it's public, because it comes with warm lighting, crowded restaurants, and the quiet assumption that danger does not belong in places meant for romance. But romance is not protection. It is a setting, and settings can be used. A blind date can be curated. A getaway can be designed to feel safe. A stranger can learn your habits without ever meeting you, and still speak to you like they know you better than anyone else. That is the part most people don't want to admit. That modern horror doesn't always come from the dark. Sometimes it comes from the things that are supposed to be beautiful. A candlelit table, a handwritten note, a perfect smile. Because the most dangerous people don't arrive as threats. They arrive as answers. Answers to loneliness. Answers to heartbreak. Answers to the quiet fear that you might never be loved properly again. And when you've been hurt before, you don't always recognize the difference between kindness and strategy. Tonight's stories are not about demons or the supernatural. They are about modern Valentine's rituals and the way they can be weaponized by someone patient enough to play along. A woman trying to start over after a long relationship, only to realize her date isn't getting to know her, he's studying her. A couple on a secluded getaway, only to learn the most dangerous person in the building is the one who welcomed them inside. And a woman who thinks she's falling for someone online until she discovers the man she trusts doesn't exist at all. Because the most disturbing part of Valentine's Day isn't the idea of love, it's the idea of access. Access to your schedule, access to your home, access to your trust. And once someone has that, the night doesn't need to end with romance. It can end with a door locking, a car starting, or a knock you open willingly, because you still believe the person on the other side is safe. Tonight, these are 3 disturbing Valentine's Day horror stories, and they all begin the same way, with something that looks perfect. Story 1. The Perfect Candidate. I used to think the worst part of a breakup was the silence afterward, the empty space where a voice used to be, the quiet in your phone, the way you stop hearing your own name said with any kind of warmth. But that was before I learned there are worse kinds of silence, the kind that happens when you realize you were never safe to begin with. The kind that happens when you are sitting across from someone who is smiling at you, holding a wine glass like he belongs there, and you suddenly understand that the date is not the date. It is an interview, and you are the only person in the room who does not know what position you're being considered for. My name is Sarah Beth Jane. I'm 27 years old. I work as a medical billing specialist at a small outpatient clinic in a quiet town where nothing ever makes the news unless someone's dog gets loose. I'm not the kind of person who ever wanted drama, and for a long time I thought I had built a life that was calm enough to protect me from it. A steady job, a small apartment, a handful of friends I trusted, and for 4 years I had a boyfriend named Tyler who seemed, on paper, like the kind of person you were supposed to end up with. He never hit me. That's what I used to tell myself, like it meant something. But he was still the kind of man who could destroy you without leaving bruises. He'd make me feel stupid for laughing too loudly. He'd talk over me in public. He'd criticize the way I dressed, the way I spoke, the way I breathed, until I started shrinking into myself so gradually I didn't even notice it happening. He made me feel like love was something you earned by behaving correctly. And when I finally ended it, after one last argument where he told me no one else would want me, I thought the hardest part was over. I thought I'd survived the worst thing that could happen. I didn't know that all I'd done was make myself visible. Rachel Marie Smith is the kind of best friend people write about in those soft, hopeful posts online. She is warmth. She is noise. She is the person who will text you at 2 a.m. if she sees a funny video and thinks you need it. She works at a cafe downtown, the kind with handmade chalkboard menus and seasonal lattes, and she knows every regular by name. Rachel has always believed that the world is better than it is. I used to envy that. After Tyler, I didn't feel capable of believing in anything good anymore. So when Rachel started pushing the idea of me going on a date again, I didn't take her seriously at first. "Sarah," she said one afternoon, while I sat at her cafe table with a half-finished cup of coffee, staring into it like it could answer my questions. "You can't just stop living." "I'm living," I said. "No, you're surviving," she corrected, leaning forward. Her eyes were bright, determined. "And you deserve better than that." I gave her a look that was meant to end the conversation. She ignored it. "I met someone," she said. My stomach tightened. "Rachel." "Not for me," she said quickly. "For you." I let out a tired laugh. "Absolutely not." "His name is Mark Butler," she said. "He's new at the cafe. Just moved here. He's sweet, he's respectful, and Sarah, he is like offensively handsome." I stared at her. "Rachel," I said slowly, "I am not going on a blind date." "It's not blind," she argued. "It's just, you haven't met him yet. That's literally what blind means." She smiled like she'd already won. "It's Valentine's Day," she said. "You can either sit at home with Netflix and a frozen pizza, or you can go somewhere nice, have a good meal, and remember what it feels like to be treated like a human being." Something about the way she said that, treated like a human being, hit me harder than it should have. Because Tyler had made me forget that love was supposed to feel like safety, and Rachel, with her relentless optimism, was standing there, offering me the idea that maybe the world still had good people in it. I wanted to believe her. That was my mistake. I agreed under conditions. 1, it had to be a public place. 2, it had to be a nice place, somewhere where people would be around. 3, if I felt uncomfortable, I could leave. No guilt. No, just give him a chance. No forcing me to be polite. Rachel swore on everything she loved that she understood. And then she texted me the reservation details. A high-end restaurant on the edge of downtown, the kind with valet parking and soft lighting, and tables set with cloth napkins folded into shapes that looked like art. I stared at the name on my phone for a long time before replying. "You're insane." Rachel sent back 3 heart emojis and the words, "Trust me." The night of Valentine's Day, I stood in my bathroom for nearly 20 minutes, holding a curling iron like I didn't remember how to use it. It wasn't that I wanted to impress him. It was that I wanted to feel like myself again. Tyler had made me feel like I was always too much, or not enough. Too emotional, too sensitive, too quiet, too loud. So I put on a simple black dress, nothing flashy, and a coat warm enough to handle the February air. I did my makeup the way I used to before Tyler started making comments about how I was trying too hard. I looked at my reflection and tried to remember what confidence felt like. Before I left, I texted Rachel, "I'm going. If I get murdered, I'm haunting you." Rachel replied instantly, "You're not getting murdered. Have fun. Text me when you get there." I stared at the word "murdered" on my screen. Then I shoved my phone in my purse and left. The restaurant was beautiful. There's no other word for it. Warm golden light, dark wood, candle flames flickering on every table, a pianist in the corner playing something soft and slow, couples leaning toward each other, laughing quietly. I walked in and immediately felt underdressed. A hostess asked for my name. "Sarah," I said, then corrected myself, because for some reason it felt important. "Sarah Beth Jane." She smiled and nodded, then led me toward a table near the back, and that's when I saw him. Mark Butler stood as I approached, like he'd been trained to do it. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair neatly styled, a suit jacket that fit him like it had been tailored. His smile was bright and practiced, but not in a way that felt fake, in a way that felt controlled. "Sarah," he said, and the way he said my name made me pause, like he'd already said it in his head 100 times. "Hi," I said, forcing myself to smile. He leaned in for a hug. Not too close, not too long, just enough. "I'm really glad you came," he said. His voice was calm, warm, low enough to feel intimate without being creepy. Everything about him felt like the kind of man you describe as safe. And that was the problem. Because predators don't look like monsters. They look like someone you'd trust to walk you to your car. For the first half of the date, it was perfect. Mark asked me about my job. He listened like it mattered. He made small jokes, nothing crude, nothing forced. He told me he'd just moved to town for a fresh start, that he liked it here because it was quiet. I'm kind of done with big cities, he said. Too many people, too many distractions. I nodded. I get that. He smiled. Rachel told me you've had a rough year. I froze slightly. It wasn't a big thing. Friends talk. But something about hearing it from him made my shoulders tense. Yeah, I said carefully. I guess you could say that. He tilted his head, watching me. 4 years, right? My stomach tightened. I didn't remember telling Rachel that exact number. I probably had. But the way he said it felt like he'd memorized it. Yeah, I repeated. 4. That's a long time, he said. Did you live together? I blinked. No. Why not? The question landed strangely. Not curious. Not conversational. It felt like a probe. I don't know, I said, trying to laugh it off. It just never happened. He nodded slowly, like he was filing the answer away. What was he like? Mark asked. I stared at him. The candlelight reflected in his eyes, making them look almost black. What do you mean? I asked. Your ex, he said smoothly. Was he intense? I shifted in my chair. I don't really like talking about him. Mark's smile didn't fade, but something about it changed. Of course, he said quickly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push. He lifted his hand slightly, palms up, a gesture that looked harmless. Then he leaned forward again, voice softer. I just think it matters, he said. Sometimes the kind of relationship you come out of affects what you accept afterward. My throat felt dry. I took a sip of water, buying time. I guess, I said. Mark's eyes stayed on me. What did he do? He asked. My pulse jumped. I stared at him, waiting for the moment where he would realize he'd crossed a line. But he didn't. He just watched me, calm, patient, like he knew silence would make me uncomfortable enough to fill it. Tyler used to do that. He used to ask questions until I felt trapped by them. And suddenly, sitting across from Mark, I felt the old familiar pressure rising in my chest. I forced myself to smile again. I'm sorry, I said. I don't want to make this date about him. Mark blinked, like he'd forgotten where he was. Then he laughed lightly. You're right, he said. That's my fault. I got carried away. He leaned back, took a sip of his wine, and the tension seemed to evaporate. Just like that. He started talking about the restaurant, about the food, about how he'd never had steak that tender in his life. He complimented my dress. He told me I had a beautiful laugh. And slowly, I started to feel ridiculous for being uneasy. Because he was charming. He was attentive. He was everything Rachel promised. Maybe I was just damaged. Maybe Tyler had made me paranoid. Maybe this was what normal dating felt like, and I'd forgotten. That's what I told myself. That was my second mistake. By the time dessert arrived, the restaurant had thinned out. The pianist had stopped playing. The candle flame seemed lower. The staff moved more quietly, cleaning tables and stacking chairs. Mark and I sat with a shared chocolate souffle between us. He smiled. You're different than I expected, he said. I frowned. Different how? He hesitated, then shrugged. Rachel said you were shy. I am shy, I said. Mark shook his head slowly. No, he said. You're careful. The way he said it made my stomach twist. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. He smiled again, like he hadn't said anything strange. It's not a bad thing, he said. It's smart. I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Mark glanced at his watch. It's getting late, he said. Do you want to come back to my place? I have a bottle of wine that's better than anything here. I felt my body tense immediately. No, I said. I'm sorry. I'm not really. I don't do that. Mark's expression didn't change. He nodded once. Of course, he said. I respect that. Relief flooded me. Then he stood. Let me walk you to your car, he said. My relief hesitated. I didn't want to be rude, and the parking lot was dark. But the restaurant had valet, and my car was parked in the far section because I hadn't wanted to pay extra. Mark was already putting on his coat. It's late, he said, and I'd feel better knowing you got there safe. That sentence, that exact sentence, It was the kind of sentence men used when they wanted to seem like protectors. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said, and I stood. The air outside was cold enough to sting. The restaurant's front entrance was bright, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, but the parking lot beyond it was darker, only a few overhead lamps casting pale circles on the asphalt. Mark walked beside me. Not too close, just close enough. "You had a good time?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yes," I said. "I did." Mark smiled. "Good." We walked in silence for a few seconds. Then Mark spoke again. "So," he said casually, "your ex, did he ever get physical?" My stomach dropped. I stopped walking. Mark stopped too, turning toward me like he'd asked what my favorite movie was. "What?" I said. Mark blinked innocently. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I said I'd stop. It matters, you know? I need to know what kind of damage I'm dealing with." My skin went cold. The words "damage I'm dealing with" hit me like a slap. "Excuse me?" I said. Mark's smile flickered, just for a second. Then it returned. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. "I'm just saying, I care. I don't want to accidentally trigger something." I stared at him. The parking lot felt suddenly too quiet. The restaurant doors were behind us, but far enough away that the warmth didn't reach. "I'm going to my car," I said. Mark's eyes stayed on mine. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said softly. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." I swallowed. I started walking again. Mark followed. My car was near the far edge of the lot, under a light that flickered slightly. As I approached, I fumbled for my keys. My fingers felt clumsy. Mark stopped a few feet behind me. "Sarah," he said quietly. I turned. He was smiling again. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "I really enjoyed it." I forced a smile. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." I turned back toward my car, and that's when his hand closed around my wrist. The grip was firm, not aggressive, just certain. I froze. "Mark," I said. He didn't respond. His other hand came up fast. Something cold pressed against the side of my neck. A needle. I didn't even have time to scream. The world tilted. My knees buckled. And the last thing I saw was Mark's face close to mine, calm and focused, like he was doing something routine, like he'd done it before. When I woke up, my mouth tasted like metal. My head throbbed. I tried to move and realized I was lying on my side, cramped, the air around me tight and stale. A car. I was in the back seat of a car. My wrists were bound with something rough. My ankles, too. Panic hit like a wave. I jerked, tried to sit up, but my head slammed into the seat. I gasped. The car was moving. I could feel the vibration of the road. I could hear the steady hum of tires on asphalt. And in the front seat, I could see Mark's silhouette, driving, calm, like nothing had happened. My throat tightened. "Mark," I rasped. He didn't turn. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice louder. "Mark." He glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes met mine, and he smiled. Not the charming smile from the restaurant. Something colder, something satisfied. "You're awake," he said. My body shook. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. Mark's voice stayed calm. "Because you were perfect," he said. "Rachel did a good job." My blood ran cold. "Rachel," I said. "Rachel doesn't know anything." Mark chuckled. "Oh, she knows," he said. "Not what I'm doing, but she knows what you are." I stared at him, heart pounding. "What I am?" I whispered. Mark's eyes flicked to the road. "Broken," he said. "Recently. 4 years. Emotionally abused. No kids. No ring. No real ties." My stomach turned. He was reciting my life like a checklist. He kept talking. "You were looking at me like I was a miracle," he said. "Like I was sent to save you. That's the best part." Tears burned in my eyes. "You're sick," I said. Mark laughed softly. "No," he said. "I'm experienced." My mind raced. The bindings on my wrists were tight, but not perfect. I twisted, trying to find slack. My fingers scraped against the rough material. I could feel it cutting into my skin. Mark's car smelled like clean leather and cologne. Everything about him, even his vehicle, felt carefully chosen, like he'd built a life that looked normal enough to hide in. I shifted my legs, testing the bindings at my ankles. Mark's voice drifted back to me. "You know what's funny?" he said. I didn't respond. Mark continued anyway. "Women always say they want a nice guy," he said. "And then when one shows up, they think it's too good to be true." My throat tightened. Mark's eyes met mine again in the mirror. "And it is," he said softly. I don't know what part of me decided to fight. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was rage. Maybe it was the memory of Tyler telling me no one else would want me. Maybe it was the sick understanding that Mark had chosen me because he thought I'd be easy. But something snapped in my chest. I lunged forward. My bound wrists slammed into the back of his seat. Mark cursed, startled. I kicked wildly, my heel striking his shoulder. The car swerved. Mark shouted, trying to control it. I kicked again, harder, catching him in the side of the head. The car jerked. We were on a suburban road, trees on either side, no streetlights, just the dark and the pale glow of the headlights. Mark fought the steering wheel. "Stop," he yelled. I didn't. I slammed my body forward again, using everything I had. The car veered. The tires hit gravel. The world spun. Then the sound came. A violent crash. Metal shrieking. Glass exploding. My body slammed against the seat. Pain flared in my ribs. The car lurched, spun, and stopped. Silence followed. The kind of silence that feels impossible after chaos. My ears rang. My vision blurred. I tasted blood. I forced my eyes open. Mark was slumped forward over the steering wheel, unmoving. His head was turned slightly, and I could see a dark smear on his temple. He was out. Or dead. I didn't know. I didn't care. I just knew I had seconds. My hands shook as I twisted my wrists. The bindings had loosened slightly in the crash. I pulled, skin tearing, and finally one hand slipped free. I sobbed, not from emotion, but from the relief of movement. I clawed at the binding on my other wrist, ripping it apart. Then my ankles, my legs trembled as I pushed myself upright. The car smelled like gasoline. The front windshield was shattered. The passenger side was crushed inward. Cold air poured through broken glass. I forced myself to breathe. I leaned forward, reaching toward the center console, and that's when I saw it. My phone, sitting inside the console, like Mark had tossed it there without thinking, like he assumed I'd never wake up. My fingers closed around it. The screen lit up. I had service. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah?" Rachel's voice was bright, like she was smiling. "How was it?" I couldn't speak at first. I just breathed. Rachel's voice changed instantly. "Sarah," she said again, sharper. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "He attacked me," I whispered. The words came out broken. Rachel went silent. "What?" she breathed. "Mark," I said. "He attacked me. He took me." "Rachel, I'm on the side of the road. There was a crash. I don't know where I am." Rachel's voice turned into something I'd never heard from her. Pure fear. "Where are you?" she demanded. "I don't know," I sobbed. "I don't know. I see trees. It's dark. I'm cold." "Okay," Rachel said quickly. "Okay. Stay on the phone. I'm calling Jacob. I'm coming right now. I'm calling the police too." "I already am," I said, and my fingers moved automatically as I dialed 911. Rachel stayed on the line until the dispatcher answered. The police arrived first. Their lights cut through the darkness, red and blue flashing across the trees. An officer approached carefully, flashlight beams sweeping over the wreck. I stumbled out of the car, arms wrapped around myself. The cold air hit my bruised skin like fire. The officer's eyes widened when he saw my wrists. The marks, the blood, the torn binding. He spoke softly. "Ma'am," he said, "are you Sarah Beth Jane?" I nodded. He turned toward the car, toward Mark slumped in the front seat. His hand moved to his radio. "Suspect is here," he said quietly. "We need medical, and we need backup." Another officer approached Mark's side. They opened the door. Mark groaned. "Alive." The officer grabbed his arm, pulled him out. Mark blinked, dazed. Then his eyes found me, and even with blood on his face, even with handcuffs being snapped onto his wrists, he smiled. Like he still thought he'd won something. Like this was just an inconvenience. I wanted to vomit. Rachel and Jacob arrived minutes later. Rachel ran toward me, her coat flapping behind her. She wrapped her arms around me so tightly I cried out, pain shooting through my ribs. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Jacob stood behind her, his face pale, eyes locked on Mark as the officers led him away. Jacob's jaw clenched. He looked like he wanted to kill him. I couldn't stop shaking. Rachel held my face in her hands. "Sarah," she whispered. "I swear on everything, I didn't know." I believed her. I did. But I also couldn't stop thinking about what Mark had said. Rachel did a good job. At the hospital, they cleaned my cuts and checked my ribs. Bruised, not broken. They told me I was lucky. They always say that. Like survival is something you win. Like it isn't something you crawl through bleeding. A detective came to speak with me early the next morning. He introduced himself as Detective Lyle Harrow. He was older, tired-eyed, with the kind of voice that sounded like he'd seen too many nights like mine. He asked me to tell him everything. I did. Every detail. Every question Mark asked. Every moment where my instincts told me something was wrong, and I ignored it. When I finished, Detective Harrow sat quietly for a long time. Then he spoke. "Sarah," he said, voice low, "I need you to understand something." I stared at him. Mark's face flashed in my mind. The smile, the needle, the mirror. Detective Harrow leaned forward. "That man," he said, "is wanted in 3 other states." My stomach dropped. "For what?" I whispered. Harrow's eyes stayed on mine. "Assault," he said. "Kidnapping. 2 cases where the women didn't make it out." My throat tightened. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Why was he here?" I asked. Detective Harrow exhaled slowly. "He moves," he said. "Changes names, changes jobs, keeps it simple." I thought of the cafe, Rachel, the warmth of that place, the chalkboard menus, the safe, normal life, and Mark had walked right into it like he belonged. "How did he choose me?" I whispered. Detective Harrow didn't answer right away. Then, he said something that still makes my stomach turn. "He didn't choose you randomly," he said. I stared at him. Harrow continued. "He chooses women who are in transition," he said. "Women who just got out of long relationships. Women who are lonely. Women who don't trust themselves anymore." My eyes burned. "How do you know that?" I whispered. Detective Harrow's voice was quiet. "Because that's what the other victims had in common," he said. I felt my body go cold. I thought of Mark's questions. Did he ever get physical? Did you live together? Why not? What kind of damage am I dealing with? He wasn't being curious. He was checking the locks on a door. He was testing how much I'd tolerate. He was making sure I was the right kind of vulnerable. Rachel visited me later that day. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot. Her eyes were red. She sat at the edge of my hospital bed, like she didn't know if she was allowed to be there. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. I nodded. "I know," I said. Rachel's hands twisted together. "He seemed so normal," she said. "He was charming. He was funny. He was polite. He asked about you, Sarah. He asked me about you." My stomach clenched. "What did you tell him?" I asked quietly. Rachel froze. Her eyes filled with tears. "I told him you'd been through a lot," she whispered. "I told him you deserved someone good. I told him you were strong." Her voice broke. "I told him you were trying to heal." The words landed like a weight. I stared at Rachel. I didn't blame her. Not truly. She didn't do it maliciously. She did it because she loved me. But Mark didn't hear those words the way Rachel meant them. He heard them like coordinates, like a map. Rachel reached for my hand. "I didn't know," she whispered. I squeezed her fingers. "I know," I said again. But deep inside, something had changed. Because I understood now that danger doesn't always force its way into your life. Sometimes you invite it in. Not because you're stupid, not because you're reckless, but because you are tired and you want to believe in something good again. Mark Butler went to jail. That's the part people like. The part where the story has a clean ending. The part where the police arrive, the predator gets handcuffed, and the victim gets to go home. But that isn't the real ending. The real ending is what happens after. It's the way you sit in your apartment with every light on. It's the way you check your locks twice. It's the way you hear footsteps in the hallway and your heart stops. It's the way you start wondering how many times you've walked past someone like Mark in a grocery store, smiling, normal, blending in. The real ending is the realization Detective Harrow gave me without meaning to. Mark didn't need to know me. He didn't need to love me. He didn't even need to meet me. He just needed to recognize the shape of my weakness. And he did. Because predators don't always feel dangerous. Sometimes they feel like exactly what you prayed for after being hurt. And the most disturbing part is not that he attacked me. It's that for most of that night, I almost believed he was real. When I think back on that date, I don't remember the steak. I don't remember the pianist. I don't remember the candlelight. I remember his questions. I remember the way he watched me. I remember the moment in the parking lot when my instincts screamed at me and I ignored them because I didn't want to seem rude. I didn't want to be difficult. I didn't want to be the kind of woman who assumed the worst. Now I understand something I wish I'd known sooner. There are people in this world who learn how to wear kindness like a mask. They learn how to speak softly. They learn how to look safe. And they go where women are trying to heal. They go where women are trying to start over. They go where women are trying to believe again, because it's easier to take something from someone who is already exhausted. And the most terrifying thing is not that Mark Butler existed. It's that men like him do, everywhere. And sometimes they're only one blind date away. Story 2. Reservation for Two. My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life, I have believed that if you plan something carefully enough, you can prevent bad things from happening. I am the kind of person who reads reviews before booking a hotel. I double-checks weather forecasts. I print confirmation emails, even though everything is digital now. I make itineraries for vacations and color code them. Control has always felt like safety to me. That is probably why what happened on Valentine's Day still feels like a personal failure. Because I chose the place. I made the reservation. I surprised my husband, and I drove us straight into it. Daniel and I had been married for 6 years. We met in college. He studied mechanical engineering. I studied early childhood education. He is steady, quiet, the kind of man who listens more than he speaks. I have always loved that about him. He makes space for other people. The last year had been heavy for both of us. My school district cut funding. I took on extra shifts tutoring to compensate. Daniel worked overtime at his firm after a major client threatened to pull out. We were exhausted in that quiet way married couples get, where love is still there but buried under logistics and bills and laundry and stress. So I decided we needed something intentional, something romantic, something to remind us who we were before everything got busy. I found the bed and breakfast online late one night while Daniel slept beside me. It was tucked off a rural highway, about 2 hours outside town. The photos showed a large Victorian house, surrounded by snow-covered trees. Warm lights glowing in every window. A fireplace in each suite, antique furniture, clawfoot tubs. The reviews were glowing. Perfect romantic getaway. Peaceful. Intimate. Margaret makes you feel like family. Margaret was the innkeeper. Her name appeared in nearly every review. I looked at the calendar. They had one room left for Valentine's weekend. I booked it immediately. Daniel was surprised. He smiled in that slow, warm way he has when he's genuinely touched. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," I replied. The drive up was quiet and beautiful. Snow lined the road in uneven banks. The sky was pale gray, the air crisp. The further we drove, the fewer cars we passed. By the time we turned onto the final stretch of road, there was nothing but trees on either side. "That's remote," Daniel said lightly. "That's romantic," I corrected. The house appeared around a bend. tall and elegant against the white landscape. Smoke curled from a chimney. The windows glowed amber. It looked like something out of a postcard. I felt proud of myself. Margaret greeted us at the door. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s. Shoulder-length gray hair pulled neatly back. A burgundy sweater, pearls at her neck. She smiled the moment the door opened, like she'd been standing there waiting for us. "Emily and Daniel," she said warmly. "Welcome." Her voice was soft, practiced. "How did you know it was us?" Daniel asked casually. Margaret smiled. "You're my only arrival tonight," she said. "Valentine's weekend is intimate here." The word intimate lingered in the air a second too long. She took our coats, hanging them carefully on antique hooks by the door. The interior smelled faintly of cinnamon and wood smoke. Soft classical music played somewhere deeper in the house. Margaret handed us 2 glasses of champagne. "For the lovely couple," she said. The way she looked at us made me feel observed, not greeted, but I dismissed it. Innkeepers are supposed to be attentive. That is the job. She insisted on escorting us to our room personally. The hallway was dim, lit by small wall sconces. The floors creaked underfoot. "This house has been in my family for generations," Margaret said as we walked. "I know every board, every nail." Her tone carried pride. We reached our suite at the end of the hall. Margaret unlocked the door and stepped aside. The room was beautiful. King-sized bed, thick quilt, fireplace crackling gently. A small table set for 2 by the window, and in the center of the bed sat a silver tray, champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, a single red rose, and a card. Margaret smiled as I stepped forward. "I like to prepare something special," she said. "Valentine's only comes once a year." I picked up the card. It read, "Emily, you deserve the kind of love that lasts forever." My breath caught. "How did you know my name?" I asked. Margaret tilted her head slightly. "You booked the room," she said gently. Of course, it made sense. Still, something about seeing my name handwritten like that unsettled me. Daniel squeezed my hand. "It's nice," he whispered. Margaret stepped toward the door. "Dinner is served at 7, she said. "Just downstairs. I'll ring a bell." Before leaving, her eyes moved slowly over both of us, lingering, measuring. Then she smiled and closed the door behind her. I didn't notice the scratch marks on the inside of the door until later. They were faint, thin lines carved into the wood near the lock. Too deep to be accidental. Too deliberate to ignore once seen. When I pointed them out to Daniel, he laughed softly. "Probably old," he said. "House is ancient." I nodded. Old houses have stories. That's what people like to say. Dinner was candlelit in the main dining room. Margaret served us herself. Roasted chicken, creamed potatoes, wine that tasted expensive. We were the only guests. No other voices. No footsteps upstairs. Just the 3 of us. Margaret moved quietly between the kitchen and the table, appearing whenever a glass was half empty. "You 2 are perfect together," she said at one point, watching us as Daniel reached for my hand. I smiled politely. "Thank you," I said. She studied Daniel a moment longer than necessary. "You must take good care of her," she said to him. Daniel chuckled awkwardly. "I try." Margaret nodded slowly. "I'm sure you do." Her eyes lingered. I told myself I was imagining the intensity. That night, we fell asleep quickly. The drive had made us tired. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. The room was warm, safe. I remember drifting off, thinking I had done something good for us, something meaningful. I woke to silence. Deep, unnatural silence. The fire had died down to embers. The room was cold. I reached beside me. The bed was empty. "Daniel?" I whispered. No response. I sat up. The bathroom light was off. His shoes were still by the door. His wallet on the dresser. His phone on the nightstand. My pulse began to race. "Daniel?" I said louder. I stood, scanning the room. The door was closed, locked, from the inside. I felt something inside me tilt. I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. Dark, still. "Daniel," I called, louder now. No answer. I ran downstairs. The dining room lights were on. Margaret stood behind the front desk, hands folded calmly, like she had expected me. "Margaret," I said, my voice shaking. "Daniel is gone." She blinked slowly. "Gone?" she repeated. "He's not in the room," I said. "His phone is still there. His wallet, too." Margaret tilted her head slightly. "He checked out," she said softly. "What?" I stared at her. "He left earlier," she continued. "Men do that sometimes." The words felt rehearsed. My vision blurred. "He would not leave me," I said. Margaret's smile did not reach her eyes. "You'd be surprised," she replied. Behind her, I noticed the guest book. It sat open on the desk. Pages filled with handwritten notes from couples over the years, but several pages were torn out entirely, cleanly removed. I felt my chest tighten. "Where is my husband?" I whispered. Margaret's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Not anger, not fear, something colder. "He's exactly where he needs to be," she said. "I don't remember deciding to move. I only remember turning and running, back through the dining room, toward the kitchen." Margaret's voice followed behind me. "Emily," she called softly, "you should come back." I ignored her. The kitchen was spotless. Too spotless. I threw open cabinets. Nothing. Then I saw it. A door near the back wall. Locked. I grabbed the handle. It didn't budge. Footsteps behind me. Margaret stood in the doorway, her posture straight, calm. "You're making this harder," she said. "For who?" I demanded. "For yourself," she replied. I looked around desperately. Then I saw a heavy cast iron skillet on the stove. I grabbed it and swung it at the lock. Once, twice. On the third strike, the old wood splintered. The door swung inward. Stairs, leading down into darkness. The air smelled damp. I heard something faint, a low sound. I didn't think. I ran down the steps. The cellar was cold and dimly lit by a single hanging bulb. And in the far corner, behind a locked metal gate, was Daniel, slumped against the wall, his hands bound, his head hanging forward. "Daniel," I cried. His head lifted slowly, his eyes unfocused. "Emily?" he murmured. Relief crashed over me so hard I nearly collapsed. I turned to the gate, locked. I could hear Margaret descending the stairs slowly behind me. "You see?" she said calmly. "He's alive." I spun around. "You're insane," I whispered. Margaret sighed. "No," she said. "I'm careful." Her eyes flicked to Daniel. "They always look so devoted at first," she continued softly. "So in love, so sure." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "My husband," she said. "He brought another woman here. On Valentine's Day. After 22 years. Her voice did not tremble. It was flat, controlled. "He told her this place was special," she continued. "That it meant something." The bulb above us swayed slightly. Shadows shifted. "I learned something that night," Margaret said. "Love is fragile. It only feels permanent." I felt my hands shake. "You don't get to punish strangers for what he did," I said. Margaret smiled faintly. "I'm not punishing," she replied. "I'm preventing." She stepped closer. "They think they are safe here," she said. "They think romance protects them. It doesn't." Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Margaret paused, her head tilted. "You called the police," she said quietly. "Yes," I whispered. Margaret looked almost disappointed. "They take so long out here," she said. The sirens grew louder. Margaret's composure finally cracked. She lunged toward me. I stumbled back, heart pounding, but the sirens were close now. Red and blue lights flashed through the cellar window. Margaret froze. For a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Not fear, resentment. Then she stepped back and raised her hands as officers flooded the room. They arrested her quietly, almost gently, as if she were just another tired old woman. In her office, they found a drawer full of wedding rings, cards signed by men who never came back to claim them, photos, dozens of couples, every February circled in a leather notebook. The detective later told me she had been doing it for years, always around Valentine's. Always couples who appeared happy. Always the husbands. "He's alive because you moved quickly." the detective said. Daniel recovered physically. But something in him changed. In me too. I still remember Margaret's words. Romance does not protect you. The most disturbing part is not that she was broken, it's that she learned how to turn heartbreak into ritual, and she built an entire business around it. Sometimes the danger is not the person you married. It's the person who welcomes you inside and promises you comfort. And sometimes the safest place in the room is the one that was designed to feel the safest of all. Story 3. Delivered with Love. My name is Natalie Brooks, and I used to think loneliness was something quiet, soft, manageable, something you could solve with noise in the background and a glass of wine at the end of the day. I did not understand that loneliness makes you visible. It makes you predictable. It makes you easier to study. I live on the 4th floor of a modern apartment complex downtown. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, secure entry system with key fobs and security cameras in the lobby. The kind of place that advertises itself as safe. I work in digital marketing for a mid-sized clothing brand. My job is mostly remote. Campaign scheduling, analytics, social media strategy. I spend most of my day in front of a screen, which is probably why it didn't feel strange to meet someone through one. His name was Ethan. At least, that's what he told me. We matched on a dating app 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. His profile was simple. Dark hair, clean smile, photos hiking, holding a coffee cup, standing in front of a bookstore. Nothing flashy, nothing shirtless, no red flags. His bio said he had recently moved to the city for work. He liked quiet nights, reading, long conversations. He was looking for something real. I almost swiped past him, but something about his smile felt calm, so I matched. He messaged first. Hey Natalie, I know this is random, but your smile looks like you're in on a secret. I remember laughing when I read that. It felt thoughtful, not rehearsed. We talked that night for 3 hours, then the next night, then every night after. He was attentive in a way that didn't feel overwhelming. He asked about my work, my favorite books, my routines. He remembered small things. You mentioned you hate mornings. You said you drink oat milk, not almond. You told me you don't like roses because they feel cliché. He paid attention. That is important, because predators pay attention. We never met in person. There was always something. He had late meetings. I had deadlines. He was out of town one weekend, but the conversations were intimate enough that it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like anticipation. He would text me good morning. He would ask if I had eaten. He would tell me I deserved more than the bare minimum. I had dated enough men who gave me the bare minimum to know the difference. Or at least, I thought I did. 2 weeks in, it felt like I knew him, which is insane. But that's how digital intimacy works. You skip the awkward silences. You skip the body language. You skip the reality of someone's presence. You get curated vulnerability, and it feels deep. On the morning of Valentine's Day, I woke to my phone buzzing on my nightstand. A text from Ethan. Happy Valentine's Day. Check your door. I frowned. I sat up slowly. The apartment was quiet. The city below my window moved as usual. Traffic, pedestrians, life. Stop, I texted back. He sent a wink emoji. My heart fluttered in that stupid, hopeful way it does when you think someone is trying. I walked to the door. When I opened it, I found a bouquet of deep red roses resting against the frame. I stared at them. Roses. He knew I didn't like roses. Or so I thought. I picked up the bouquet. There was a small white card tucked between the stems. It read, "For the girl who deserves something better." My breath caught. I stepped back into my apartment, closing the door behind me. I picked up my phone. You didn't have to. I texted. 3 dots appeared immediately. I didn't send anything. I stared at the screen. What? I typed. I didn't send you flowers, he replied. I felt my stomach tighten. Very funny, I sent back. No, he wrote. I'm serious. I haven't left my apartment. I stood there, bouquet in hand, my apartment door locked behind me. The hallway outside silent. My heart began to race. Are you sure? I typed. Yes, he responded. Do you think someone else sent them? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty. The camera at the end of the corridor blinked its small red light. Recording. Safe. Right? I told myself it was a mix-up. Maybe a delivery mistake. Maybe a secret admirer. Maybe someone playing a prank. The bouquet was expensive. Too expensive to be random. I placed it on my kitchen counter. The smell filled the room. Heavy. Sweet. Too much. Around noon, there was another knock. I froze. This time, it was a delivery driver. He handed me a small box. Valentine's delivery, he said. I signed for it automatically, closed the door, opened the box. Chocolate truffles, high-end brand, the kind you see behind glass displays. Another card. Sweet things for a sweet girl. My hand shook slightly. I grabbed my phone. You swear you didn't send these? I texted. He replied instantly. I swear. Then another message. That's creepy. My pulse quickened. It is. I typed. He sent. Maybe you have a secret admirer. Maybe I have competition. It was meant to be playful. It landed wrong. The third delivery came at 4:17 p.m. I remember the time because I had just closed my laptop after finishing a campaign review. There was no knock, just a soft thud against my door. I opened it cautiously. Another small box. No delivery driver. No footsteps in the hallway. Just silence. Inside was a framed photograph. My breath stopped. It was a picture of me, standing in my living room, taken from outside my window. The timestamp in the corner read 2:13 p.m. that same day. I could see myself clearly. My couch, my coffee table, the rug I bought last summer. I felt the blood drain from my face. My window faces the inner courtyard. There are no balconies directly across from mine, just other windows, other apartments. My hands trembled as I backed away. I checked the lock on my door, secure. I ran to the window and pulled the curtains closed. My phone buzzed. Ethan. Are you okay? He asked. I stared at the message. How would he know to ask that right now? Someone took a picture of me, I typed. There was a long pause before his reply. How? I don't know. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Call the police, he wrote. I hesitated. Then I did. The officers arrived within 20 minutes. 2 of them. Calm. Professional. They took the bouquet, the chocolates, the photograph. They asked about anyone I dated recently. Anyone I'd rejected. Anyone who might have access to my apartment. Maintenance, one of them asked. I blinked. What about maintenance? I said. They have master keys, he explained. When was the last time someone came into your unit? I tried to think. 2 weeks ago, I said slowly. They fixed my sink. Do you remember who? He asked. I nodded faintly. Tall guy, I said. Brown hair. Name tag, said Kyle. The officers exchanged a look. They asked if I had cameras inside my apartment. I didn't. They asked if I had given my number to anyone besides the dating app. I shook my head. Then one of them asked, Do you have the profile of the man you've been talking to? My stomach dropped. Yes, I said quietly. I opened the app. Ethan's profile picture stared back at me, smiling, safe. The officer leaned closer. Has he been here? He asked. No, I said quickly. Are you sure? Yes, I insisted. The officer nodded slowly. Can we get a screenshot of his profile? I did. He studied it carefully. Then, he said something that made my chest tighten. Sometimes people use stolen photos, he said. I stared at him. What? It happens, he continued calmly. It's called catfishing. I felt cold. No, I said softly. We've talked every day. The officer nodded gently. That doesn't mean he is who he says he is. They left after collecting evidence. I sat on my couch in silence. The roses stared at me from the counter. My phone buzzed again. Ethan. What did the police say? He asked. I hesitated before responding. They're looking into it, I typed. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I'm sorry this is happening, he wrote. Something shifted inside me. I scrolled back through our messages. 2 weeks of conversation, details, patterns, questions. He had asked about my routine, when I worked from home, when I left for the gym, when I usually ordered groceries. At the time, it felt like interest. Now it felt like data collection. My breathing quickened. I opened the dating app profile again. I clicked on his photos, zoomed in, reverse image searched. My stomach flipped. The first image appeared on a stock photography website. The second belonged to a man in another state. The third was pulled from a travel blog. My hand started shaking uncontrollably. The name Ethan meant nothing. The face meant nothing. I called the police back immediately. They returned later that evening, this time with a detective. They traced the IP address connected to the account. It didn't lead out of state. It didn't lead to some distant city. It led to my apartment complex, specifically to a Wi-Fi router registered to building maintenance. The detective's face hardened as he explained it. The account was created from inside this building, he said. I felt like I couldn't breathe. They knocked on the maintenance office door downstairs. No answer. They accessed the log of master key entries. My unit had been accessed 4 times in the last month. Times I was at work, times I was at the gym, times I thought I was alone. I felt something inside me collapse. They found him in the maintenance storage room. Kyle. The same man who fixed my sink. Same brown hair, same polite smile. He looked smaller without the tool belt, without the authority of the building. When they brought him upstairs in handcuffs, I stood in my doorway. I watched him walk past. He looked at me, and he smiled. The same calm smile from the dating app photos, the same tone in his messages. You shouldn't have called, he said softly. The officer tightened his grip on his arm. Shut up, the officer muttered. Kyle's eyes stayed on mine. I was going to meet you tonight, he continued quietly. Like we planned. My blood turned to ice. Planned. Ethan had suggested meeting in person that night. For the first time, Valentine's Day, inside my building. I knew you'd be alone, he added. The officer shoved him forward. I stood there shaking. They searched his locker. Inside they found printouts of my dating profile, screenshots of our conversations, notes written in careful handwriting. She responds well to reassurance, prefers texting over calls, works from home Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was not random. It was not impulsive. It was a system. He had chosen me, created Ethan, studied me, entered my apartment, left the gifts, watched me through my own window, and waited. The detective told me later that Kyle had done this before, not always escalating this far. Sometimes just messages, sometimes just access. Valentine's Day was supposed to be the next step, a romantic meeting, a moment where digital intimacy became physical, on his terms, inside my home. I moved out 2 weeks later, new building, different neighborhood, new locks. I deleted every dating app, I changed my number, I installed cameras, but none of that changed the part that stays with me. The worst realization is not that someone broke into my apartment. It's that the person I trusted most for 2 weeks never existed. Every good morning text, every late night conversation, every compliment, every reassurance. It was him, standing in my doorway with a toolbox, holding a master key, watching me through glass. Loneliness does not announce itself as danger. It disguises itself as hope. And sometimes, the person who seems to understand you best is not someone who sees your soul. It's someone who studied your patterns and learned how to speak your language, delivered with love. That's what the card said. But love was never part of it. Only access, only timing, only control. And the most terrifying thing of all is this. If I had not opened that box, if I had not reversed that image, if I had ignored that uneasy feeling just a little longer, Valentine's Day would not have ended with handcuffs. It would have ended with a knock on my door. And this time, I would have opened it willingly. You have reached the end of tonight's stories. The final moment where the lights come back on, the phone is lowered, and Valentine's Day is supposed to return to what it always pretends to be. Warm, safe, harmless. But if anything lingered tonight, If any part of these stories stayed with you longer than it should have, it is because the horror wasn't supernatural. It was familiar. A date that felt perfect until the question stopped sounding like curiosity and started sounding like evaluation. A getaway designed for romance, until the person hosting it revealed that privacy can be weaponized just as easily as love. A connection built through messages and good mornings, until the truth was simple and unbearable. The man was never real. Because the most disturbing part of Valentine's Day is not what people do for love. It's what they can do with access. Access to your history, access to your patterns, access to your loneliness. And once someone has that, the night does not need to become chaotic to become dangerous. It only needs to stay quiet. Quiet enough for you to keep trusting what you see. Quiet enough for you to keep being polite. Quiet enough for you to keep believing the setting will protect you. Tonight's stories were not about monsters. They were about people who learned how to look safe, and environments designed to make you lower your guard. Because the most dangerous failures are not the ones that feel wrong immediately. They're the ones that feel perfect. So if you take anything from tonight, let it be this. Do not confuse charm with safety. Do not confuse romance with protection. Do not confuse familiarity with trust. And if something ever feels too good to be true, pause. Pay attention to the details you want to ignore. The question asked too precisely. The room prepared too perfectly. The gift that arrives with knowledge no stranger should have. Because sometimes the horror doesn't begin when you're alone. Sometimes it begins the moment you stop being careful. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Stories about modern life, modern routines, and the quiet systems beneath them. Let me know in the comments which story stayed with you the longest. The blind date that turned into a trap. The getaway that became a ritual. Or the messages that felt like love. Until you realized they were surveillance. Like the video so these stories reach others who still believe danger always announces itself. With noise, with chaos, with something unmistakable, and not with a perfect smile, a romantic setting, and a Valentine's night that looks safe right up until it isn't. And if you have your own experience, a night that felt normal until it didn't, a person who seemed perfect until they revealed what they really were, a moment where you realized too late that someone had been learning you, you can always share it. The business email is in the channel bio. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with the quiet dread. And until next time, trust your instincts, protect your peace, and remember, the most frightening people rarely look like threats. They look like answers. And remember, the dark awaits.